Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome to Policy and Rights, the show about government policy and human rights. And welcome back to Policy and Rights here on Depictions Media Radio. I am Michael Clogs, your host. We're going to hear from the a UN noon press briefing, and we're also going to hear from the ambassador to the United Nations from the United States, speaking about what is happening in Iran. And here it is in a nutshell. Iran is still persecuting women as they protest. This is gone beyond just simply protesting or persecuting women for not wearing the appropriate dress while outside. They're actually persecuting women for protesting the fact that someone was killed by the police and possibly brutally beaten, and the people of Iran are not sitting still for this. They are protesting in the streets, and the Iranian government is attacking people for peaceful protests, which should be allowed. But when we consider the Iranian government, that anytime you oppose something that they think, that they try to eliminate you as a threat. And we'll hear more from that from Linda Thomas Greenfield when we get to her segment. So before that, the United Nations is expecting the Black Sea deal to resume and for ships to start moving again. Russia did come to the table and negotiate, so some sort of agreement was actually made. We will hear from this in their press briefing today that we recorded. And with all that being said, that today is the anniversary for safe journalism, a call from the United Nations to allow journalists to operate and speak freely, and we've seen that that's not exactly so. And we have Belarus halt a flight because they want to get at a journalist, and we have even Western governments trying to shut down independent journalists from being able to speak. So there's a long road to go if you are a journalist just simply trying to report to the people what is happening in our world. So let's move forward with today's segments, starting with the UN noon press briefing.
to navigate our complex world and to advance the Sustainable Development Goals. As we mark the 10th anniversary of the UN Plan of Action on the Safety of Journalists, the Secretary General calls on governments and the international community to take the necessary steps to protect our journalists, to end a common culture of impunity, and to enable journalists to do their essential work. A quick note to add that UNESCO's report on the safety of journalists is out on the agency's website. Okay. As they say, once more with feeling, right? Yeah. What?
Might happen twice.
Yeah. I'm going to skip. I'll go back. I'll do the first one last because all right, somebody's clearly joined us. You saw a bit earlier today, we issued a statement in which the Secretary General warmly welcomes the announcement from the Russian Federation on its resumed participation on the implementation of the Black Sea Grain Initiative to facilitate the safe navigation of exports of grain, foodstuff, and fertilizer from Ukraine. He is grateful for the diplomatic efforts of Turkey and thanks the UN coordinator, Amir Abdullah, and his team for their work in keeping this vital food supply line open. The Secretary General continues his engagement with all actors towards the renewal and full implementation of the initiative, and he also remains committed to removing remaining obstacles to the exports of Russian food and fertilizer. Speaking of the Secretary General, he is, as we speak, hopefully in the air on his way back to New York. We expect him to land shortly. He was in Algiers last night where he addressed the opening session of the League of Arab States Summit. In his remarks, he said he looks forward to continuing our work together with the Arab League to address the challenges across the region and advance peace, sustainable development, and human rights. Turning to the issue of climate, he said that COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh will be another vital opportunity for restoring trust between developed and developing countries. His remarks were online and shared with you. Quick update from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where, as we've mentioned a number of times before, renewed fighting between the Congolese army and the M23 armed group has forced thousands to flee their homes in Rutshuru territory, North Kivu. Many of those displaced have been living in schools, hospitals, churches, and other sites, although the majority are living with host families. Despite severe access constraints, humanitarian workers have started helping displaced people in Nyarongo territory, providing them with water and health care. Our partners are also able to distribute food to some 50,000 people. More than 180 unaccompanied children have been identified and assisted by child protection workers, while some 2,000 others are receiving psychosocial support. The needs still exceed present capacities, especially in the south of Kane health zones in Lubero territory, which was already home to some 50,000 displaced people. The most urgent needs include water, hygiene, sanitation, as well as essential household items and shelter, food, health care, and protection. For its part, the peacekeeping mission in the country continues to protect civilians, to work alongside the Congolese army, and to deter the M23 and other armed groups in the eastern part of the country. To do so, the mission is maintaining multiple positions where possible in the zone of hostilities. And following consultations with national partners, the peacekeeping mission withdrew its peacekeepers from its base in Rumangabo in North Kivu, an area where Congolese army is no longer present. Sadly, we've had to report an incident against peacekeepers that took place yesterday. A crowd of people threw stones at a peacekeeping convoy, which was at an army checkpoint near a site for displaced people about 8 kilometers north of Goma. 2 peacekeepers were injured and at least 1 mission vehicle was set on fire. Peacekeepers fired warning shots to ensure safe passage of the convoy. Our colleagues note that this type of violence and destruction of equipment limits the mission's capacity to carry out its mandate to protect civilians and support the delivery of humanitarian assistance to vulnerable communities. And just north of the DRC in the Central African Republic, you saw that last night we issued a statement in which the Secretary General welcomed the completion of the first trial of the Special Criminal Court in the Central African Republic. The UN mission in that country reports to us that it's continuing its efforts in support of national authorities to protect the population around the country. Over the past week, military peacekeepers conducted over 1,600 patrols, nearly 20% more than in the previous week. This includes operations in Zangba on the border with Democratic Republic of the Congo that has now covered more than 280 kilometers over 1 month and is showing results. This week, the peacekeeping mission repelled armed groups in Bada, in Basse-Kotto Prefecture, seizing weapons and materiel. The operation also accompanied the mission. A lot of words today. The operation is accompanied by the repairing of roads and bridges, as well as community engagement activities to improve ties with the population and better understand their problems. Meanwhile, in Bangui, peacekeepers are continued to patrol, providing convoy escorts to help secure the capital and its periphery. Peacekeepers also conducted medical camps this week in Bangui, among other places, and distributed 47,000 liters of drinking water, benefiting about 1,500 people. Moving on to Haiti, our human rights colleagues there tell us that at least 243 civilians were killed and another 198 injured in September and October. Regarding cholera, the data collected by authorities shows a continued increase in the number of suspected cholera cases, with close to 3,400 cases recorded as of yesterday. The Pan American Health Organization continues to provide technical assistance to the Ministry of Health while procuring medical supplies and equipment, including 300 additional beds to increase the capacity of 15 currently functioning cholera treatment centers. In October, UNICEF and the National Water Distribution Authorities distributed over 331,000 liters of safe drinking water at a site for displaced people. UNICEF and their partners have also reached over 11,500 households in Cité Soleil with cholera prevention communication. Our humanitarian health partners are providing health care to 600 people, including 400 children across Cité Soleil. In the past few days, our colleagues in the World Food Program carried out special food distributions also in Cité Soleil, as well as Cap-Haïtien and Messade in different departments. They reached close to 22,000 people, which is nearly double the number of people reached since the fuel crisis began in September. Finally, during the past week, the International Organization for Migration provided 29,000 non-food items to health partners working in cholera treatment centers. And just a note from Lebanon, the International Support Group for Lebanon, which includes the UN, issued a statement today that notes with concern the continued lack of cooperation among Lebanese political actors that has precipitated a presidential vacuum. That vacuum comes at a time when Lebanon most requires quick and decisive action to address its dire economic, financial, and institutional crises. More than ever, the support group says Lebanon needs fully functioning state institutions that can pursue comprehensive reforms with a strategic vision that generates substantive change for the public good. It calls on the members of parliament to elect without delay a new president of the republic who will unite the Lebanese people in their national interest. Couple of notes to share with you. Tomorrow there'll be an event at 3:15 in the Dag Hammarskjöld Library. It will be done in partnership with the City College of New York, and it's to launch the selected papers of former Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. The collection of selected papers are now available online and provide a previously unseen look into the work and thoughts of our previous Secretary General during his 10 years in office. Mr. Ban will be there in person tomorrow, 3:15, and he'll be joined by the Deputy Secretary General, who will open up the event. Today is the International Day to End Impunity for Crimes Against Journalists. In his message, the Secretary General reminds us that a free press is vital to a functioning democracy, to expose wrongdoing, navigate our complex world, and to advance the Sustainable Development Goals. Lastly, big shout out to our friends, the tour guides today, who are all in their own way, spokespeople for this organization. They celebrate their 70th anniversary of the guided tour operations, the same day the doors of the UN headquarters of this building opened in 1952. To mark the occasion, an exhibit on the history and role of the tour guides as ambassadors to the public is on view in the UN visitors lobby. The UN Postal Administration has issued a special commemorative stamp sheet for purchase of the stamp shop, and a press release is being shared with you. Being a tour guide is a great formation for UN staffers. Michelle and then Edie.
Thanks, Steph. First of all, sorry, did you say anything on Ethiopia?
No. Would you like to ask me something on Ethiopia?
Yes. First, I have a couple of questions. Do you have any reaction to the announcement of a ceasefire?
Yes, we've just seen the announcement. We obviously will be looking into the details, but this is very much a welcome first step, which we hope can start to bring some solace to the millions of Ethiopian civilians that have really suffered during this conflict.
Thank you. And on Ukraine and the grain deal and Russia's resumption of its participation, can you now give us more of an idea of what the Secretary General has been up to over the past few days in terms of trying to get this deal back on track? And how does he now feel about the chances of actually getting it renewed again before November 19?
Well, we very much hope that the deal will be renewed, fully implemented. I think the Secretary General had been working a lot of phones over the last 3 days, speaking to a wide array of member states. I think what is clear is that the world as a whole has a stake in the full implementation of the initiative, as well as in the removal of any obstacles in the trade of Russian grain and fertilizer.
Can you tell us
Edith,
who he spoke to?
I will not go any further.
And just, sorry, one more thing. Iran is a member of the Commission on the Status of Women. Mm-hmm. Does the Secretary General believe they should remain a member of the CSW?
Who gets to sit on which commission member states themselves take through an electoral process? The Secretary General has no role. Or voice in that decision. What I would say is that, and I've said this before, is that for any country that is the member of a council or a commission on a certain issue, I think has even greater responsibility in ensuring the full implementation of the mandate of that commission or group. Ms. Lederer.
Just one more follow-up on the grain deal. We know that President Erdogan had direct talks with the Russians, as did the Turkish and Russian defense ministers. Was the Secretary General involved personally in any talks with Russian leaders?
Yes. I mean, I'm not hiding anything from you. Secretary General did not have a direct conversation with President Putin in the last 3 days. He did, however, have a number of conversations with various Russian officials.
Okay. And secondly, the DPRK, North Korea, launched its greatest missile barrage today, including one missile that went across the demarcation line, and the South Koreans responded. Does the Secretary General have any response to this escalation?
The Secretary General remains seriously concerned about the increasing tensions that we're seeing on the Korean Peninsula. The DPRK's continued launches of missiles using ballistic missile technology are clear violations of relevant Security Council resolutions and contribute to increasing regional and international tensions. There is an urgent need to renew diplomatic efforts. The Secretary General urges the DPRK to immediately return to the negotiating table. He also urges the key parties to resume their diplomatic efforts with a view to achieving sustainable peace and a complete and verifiable denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, and to foster an environment that is conducive to dialogue. Benno.
Thank you. Another follow-up on the grain deal. Are you aware of any conditions under which Russia joined the initiative again?
No.
Then a question about Haiti. Can you give us an update about the SG's efforts of establishing a supporting force for the country?
The SG's recommendation was that member states gather together and come up with a plan to send a force to help deal with the police situation, the security situation. We understand those talks are still ongoing, but we have not been, nothing at least been shared with us, as far as I know, of any breakthrough on that front. The situation is not improving on the ground, so it becomes more and more important for member states to heed the Secretary General's call. Betul.
Steph, I'll just follow up on the grain deal. You talked about the phone calls the SG had. Can you please elaborate on these phone calls? Did the SG talk to any Turkish officials, and what did he talk about with? And did he also talk to the Ukrainian officials? And if he did talk to the Turkish officials, did he get anything on the renewal of the grain deal?
Well, the renewal is automatic unless there is an active no. He spoke to. I know he spoke to the ambassador here. I'll have to check if he spoke to anybody else. But our colleagues in Istanbul were in constant contact with the Ministry of Defense in Ankara, the Ministry of Foreign Relations as well. The Secretary General spoke to President Zelensky. I know he was on the phone almost constantly, all day on Sunday, most of Saturday, and I know he didn't. I know he didn't leave his house on Sunday because he was just on the phone, literally all the time. In these types of crises, I think the Secretary General is one to involve himself directly and speaking to his advisors and speaking to PRs and ministers and whatever he needs to do.
Is he hopeful about the renewal of the deal following his conversations with various
Mr. Griffiths,
officials?
I think, stated his optimism. We very much hope it will be done. As I said, this is something for the benefit of the sake of the world. We saw, if I'm not mistaken, today a downward trend in the wheat future prices as soon as the announcement was made. So we know this has real life consequences for millions of people. Victoria.
Hello, thank you.
Yeah,
whatever is
yeah,
best for you.
I've been called worse.
Yeah. I want to ask also about grain deal. So Russians said that they rejoined the grain deal after they got written security guarantees from Ukraine. I wonder whether you heard about the written security guarantees and whether the Russians gave some guarantees that those vessels they value so much, the military ships Ukraine attacked, would not bomb Ukrainian cities and towns in future.
Look, you're basically asking me to speak for both the Ukrainian government and the Russian government, which is not something I can do. Our colleagues in the Joint Coordination Center in Istanbul, throughout the weekend, we're talking to the Russian delegation, we're talking to the Ukrainian delegation, obviously the Turkish delegation. We know there were contacts, reported in the press between Turkey and the Russian Federation. What is important for us is that the suspension is no longer in effect, and we expect ships to start moving tomorrow. Madame, and then Gregory.
Thank you. Stefan, two questions. The first one is, what is the feeling of the Secretary General on what is happening in Brazil? We know that it's being protests in the streets, but also the President Bolsonaro hasn't really publicly conceded. And the second question has to do with the Venezuela talks. We know that yesterday the president of Colombia met with the president of Venezuela, and one of the points that says that hopefully they will restart the talks in Mexico. The UN had the possibility of getting involved. Can you give us any advance on that?
Okay, I'll go backwards. The rapprochement, I think, between Colombia and Venezuela is something that we very much welcome. It is good for both countries. It is good for the region, and also good for the humanitarian situation. I don't have any updates on the talks themselves. On your first question, my answer is the same I give about every country after an election, is that we hope that all those who have issues with the elections or the election results use the existing constitutional or legal avenues to address whatever concerns they have. The Secretary General spoke on Monday with President Lula. He congratulated him. They've known each other for quite some time.
A quick follow-up. Is any concerns of this rhetoric of before the election happening to have politicians, and in this case the president of Brazil and his team, to question the transparency of the election, to question the system, the machines? Is that create a worry for the Secretary General of this type of rhetoric, creating a seed of doubt on people?
I think it's very important in any country that citizens have full faith in the electoral system, and those who are part of that electoral system support the institutions. Gregory.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Russian Foreign Ministry and its statement today said that Russia is strongly committed to indemnification of nuclear war and also committed to any confrontation of nuclear states. So, do you have any comment on that?
Well, I mean, that certainly is the goal of the Secretary General, to never have to see any nuclear conflict. Yep.
Thank you. My first question is about the call of the Secretary General to Lebanese parties to end the presidential vacuum and to elect a president of the Republic in Lebanon. So, what are the measures that the UN could do to help?
I mean, the UN and the international community cannot substitute itself for Lebanese political leaders. There's an elected parliament.
Yeah.
Leaders, whether it's in Lebanon or ever, need to live up to their responsibilities. Right, a president needs to be elected in a country that faces institutional crises, financial crises, and also cholera, all sorts of crises for which, in order to deal with those crises, you need strong institutions. We through the International Support Group, will always be there to help in any way we can the Lebanese people, and to help Lebanese leaders move forward on a positive path, but we can't substitute ourselves for them.
The cooperation of the governments in Syria and Lebanon with the UN, are they cooperating with you as UN in terms of fighting cholera, or how do you assess their cooperation?
Well, I mean, first of all, it is the responsibility of any state to take care of its own people. So they are in the lead in dealing with these crises, right? We are there to support state institutions. You're dealing in Lebanon with a country that has had for years now severe financial challenges, which has an implication on the healthcare system, on the water distribution system. In Syria, you have a country that faces years of conflict, and we know that for a fact that sometimes water distribution system has been purposely targeted, and so there is, when you're dealing in a conflict zones, the access to fresh potable water for everybody becomes a challenge. So we're working with both the governments in Syria, the government in Lebanon, to try to help them address the crisis with the full support of the UN system. Ms. Fasulo.
Thank you, Steph. Going back to the Black Sea deal, we know that the Secretary General advocated that the arrangement be a two-part deal, the second, of course, being that Russia be allowed to ship its fertilizer, food, etc., around the world. Last week you mentioned that it's primarily a commercial deal, and that so the UN doesn't have a big role. My question is that given the SG's major support of this, Do you know if there's any communication going on with the countries, perhaps, that would have clout with the in other words, we've heard that ports are blocking the export, some ports, and that insurance companies, shipping companies are not providing whatever's needed to ship out goods. So the question I have is, the countries that have clout, perhaps in giving assurances to the commercial companies, is there any pressure or, shall I say, discussion from the UN in facilitating that?
Exactly. The discussions the Secretary General is having on that, on the facilitation of trade of Russian fertilizer and food products is primarily with the European Union, the United States, and the United Kingdom, right? Mm-hmm. And we very much hope to see progress in that department. Madame.
Hi, it's my debut. Amanda, CNBC. I just wanted to get your reaction. Earlier today, the White House accused North Korea of supplying Russia with weapons, which they believe will make an appearance on the battlefield in Ukraine. And so I'm wondering what the UN reaction is to this, considering this comes on the heel of allegations that Tehran is also supplying the Kremlin with weapons.
Well, we have we from the Secretary point of view have no way of verifying that or another. There are existing sanctions against the DPRK. I have no doubt that this will be issued that will be seen by the group of experts, by the sanctions experts. I mean, our feeling is that we don't want to see more weapons go into that theater. We want to see relief for the civilians that have been suffering. Ms. Kubiak, you are up to brief, and thank you. And hasta la vista.
By Dr. Ibadi and Nazanin Boyadi's powerful testimonies. And I was heartened that the Special Representative, Raymond, and so many member states joined us at this meeting. Together we condemn the Iranian government's brutal crackdown on peaceful protesters. We cannot stay silent as security forces detain, torture, and gun down peaceful protesters, as dozens of civil society activists, journalists, and lawyers are locked up. But today was also incredibly uplifting. It was a chance to shine a spotlight on the brave women and men that have taken to the streets all over Iran. Across ethnicities and social classes, Iranians have come together under the banner of women, life, freedom. These protests have spread across the country and even around the world, from Istanbul to Afghanistan to New York. People have gathered to protest in solidarity with the Iranian people. These demonstrations should inspire all member states here at the UN, because while change in Iran should only come from within Iran, we have a responsibility to stand with the Iranian people. Our words are powerful. They hold weight, and Iranians must hear from us. We must give them our moral support. That's what you heard today from countries around the world. The United States also believes there must be accountability for the horrific repression and violence the Iranian government is carrying out. That's why, as Vice President Harris announced today, we will work with other member states to remove the Islamic Republic of Iran from the UN Commission on the Status of Women. The work of promoting gender equality and empowering women should not be entrusted to a member state that systematically oppresses its own women and girls. We will also look for opportunities to raise this issue in every applicable UN forum, including the Human Rights Council and in Third Committee. We must rise to meet this moment, and we must stand with the Iranian people as they protest for women, for life, and for freedom. Thank you very much.
We'll start with Maria.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Ambassador. As you heard at the area familiar meeting, Mrs. Shireen Ebadi asked that Iranian people are asking the United States to not sign any deal that is going to help the regime to stay in power for longer. That is what people of Iran want. That is what Mrs. Shireen Ebadi said. What is your answer to people of Iran who are protesting on the streets in Iran and they are losing their lives? And what is your message to women of Iran?
Well, we support them. We support them in every way possible. What we're focused on right now are the brutal attacks that are taking place on the streets of Iran. We're focused on the Iranian government providing weapons to the Russians to kill Ukrainians. That is the focus of our attention today as well as in the coming weeks.
We'll go to Ibtisam.
Hi, thank you, Ambassador. My name is Ibtisam Azim from Al Arabi Al Jadid newspaper. Two questions. Earlier today, the Iranian ambassador unfortunately didn't take any questions, but read a statement accusing the U.S. of mangling in internal affairs, and then said that the sanctions on Iran are the ones who causing the suffering of the Iranian people. So your comments on that. And my second question is on what the special rapporteur said today, Mr. Rahmani, about he called on establishing a special independent a mechanism to investigate the violation of human rights in Iran. How do you want to support that? Are there specific steps you are taking to work on that? Thank you.
Good. As far as what the Iranian ambassador had to say, I really have no comment on that. What he said was not unexpected. What is happening in Iran is very serious. They are attacking women and men who are protesting on the street. A young woman was killed. In fact, more than one was killed. And the Iranian government is responsible for that. The world is not responsible for that. Sanctions are not responsible for that. What they need to do is start allowing for freedom of protest, allow women to make decisions about what they would like to wear, and not kill them or jail them because of that. We support the special rapporteur's call for a special commission to investigate and hold accountable those members of the Iranian government responsible for this. How that will be developed is not yet on the table, but we support his efforts.
We have time for one more. We'll go to Michelle. And James, we'll get you out.
Yeah.
He's got a quick one. We were very
It's on a different subject.
Yeah. First of all, just a quick sort of procedural follow-up. How do you go about getting Iran off CSW? Is it a vote in ECOSOC? Sorry. Is it a vote in ECOSOC that is required to oust them from the CSW, or do you need to go to the GA?
Look, we're going to be working with other member states on how we proceed on that. We haven't determined that yet, but over the course of the coming days and weeks, we will be doing that.
North Korea, there was more missiles overnight. Are you planning to raise that in any form at the Security Council? And when was the last time that the US tried to reach out to North Korea?
Look, we are very disturbed by these tests. I'm told it's the largest number in history, so certainly we will be asking to engage with other Security Council members on a way forward in dealing with this. And I didn't hear your last question.
When was the last time that the United States reached out to North Korea to try and talk to them?
Well, I think you know that was during the Trump administration, but we have made clear since the beginning of this administration that we're open to dialogue with the government of DPRK. They just need to accept that openness.
Ambassador, finally from me,
rarely from me a good news question, but possibly this is good news. The news coming out of Pretoria, those talks on Ethiopia, there seems to be a cessation of hostilities. Can we get your reaction?
I am delighted to hear that these talks have led to a cessation of hostilities. This is an important movement because what it means is that lives will be saved. We don't know what the next steps are, but we support the efforts of South Africa, Kenya, and the EU, as well as the UN, to find a way forward to end this horrific war in Ethiopia. Thank you.
Ambassador.
This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.